Ambition can be both a good thing and a bad thing. Someone can get an idea in their head, but ambition is that spark that actually pushes this idea and turns it into something we call a creation. How far can this project go? Will people enjoy it? Is the effort worth the end result? Am I getting tired of making this? How do I reignite that spark? Will it help if I monetize this project? Can I make money off of this? Does anybody really care? I'm sure most of the people who are watching this video already know the answer for this particular game. So for those of you who don't know what this is, I'm gonna spoil the ending for you right now. This game doesn't have a good ending. It doesn't have a bad ending either. This game has no ending because it isn't finished. Chapter 1 was released all the way back in 2013, with the promise of 3 more chapters and an epilogue to follow. As of now, it's the year 2022, and we still have no second chapter. So this video will act as a retrospective of Underhell, but I'm mostly making this video as a sort of coin for me to throw into a wishing well, just hoping against hope that this game can maybe be finished in one form or another. I'm BottleCap Ninja 10, and I'd like to welcome everybody to Underhell.
Jake, can you hear me? Hang in there. I'm gonna take care of you, buddy. You're gonna be alright.
Underhell is a Half-Life mod, and that means this game is completely free to play, and hopefully once you've watched all or part of this video, you'll actually want to play Underhell. Because of this, I'm going to leave out a lot of details from this mod. I'll still cover the main story, but I'm going to omit a few more of the subtler details, and I'm going to cover up pretty much all of the larger surprises. In Underhell, you play as Jake. He is a silent protagonist whose background is slowly unraveled when playing Underhell, so we'll find out more about Jake and his past as we play through Underhell together. Now, I actually somewhat regret making this game my first retrospective. It's because Underhell tries doing so many different things at once that you can be forgiven for thinking that someone completely different from the developer had a hand in making this game. You'll see slowly over the course of this game exactly what I mean. But if I can give you like a quick and simple explanation for what I mean, you know how in the Fear series, how it would break up the action gameplay with a few horror segments? Underhell doesn't really do that. In Underhell, this house is dedicated to those horror moments, whereas in the other chapters it relies mostly on atmosphere and gameplay for its horror, instead of jump scares. This house acts as a hub world for you when you're playing Underhell, but it's still an important part of the game, don't get me wrong on that. It has a lot, it has a lot of different ways it can try and scare you. It has events that can explain some of Jake's backstory, as well as letters he can receive in the mail, or diary pages written by his late wife. There's even a secret level, but we'll get into that later. Some people playing this game might be tempted to ignore the house, writing it off as irrelevant and skip it to play the other chapters, or just try and quickly move on with the game. But the house itself has a ton of content in it. Naturally curious players might find some of the doors in this house are actually locked off to the player, opening only after solving certain puzzles. During your exploration of the house, you'll find out that part of this game actually runs on a day and night cycle, where a lot more can happen during the night. You can walk around the house trying to provoke these paranormal events, or Jake can prompt the player to go to bed. Doing so will reveal that Jake is actually plagued by nightmares. As such, he requires the need of a dream catcher in order to have a good night's sleep. Alternatively, you can remove the dream catcher if you'd like to experience some of Jake's nightmares. These act as small, separate puzzles or obstacle courses for Jake to overcome. In the end, you're rewarded with a little more backstory. Honestly, I'm not a fan of these. They could be very slow and very luck-based. It's fine for your first time playing, but repeat playthroughs are almost agonizing in how slow and random they can be. Worse yet, I think they might be mandatory for unlocking everything in the house. In order to progress through the game, you're prompted to grab a few supply crates from the shed next to Jake's truck. Entering the shed causes Jake to reminisce about his past, introducing us to the tutorial level. This takes place during Jake's initiation into SWAT. You'll have to guide him around an obstacle course and shooting range in order to progress. Thankfully, if you had already completed the course, or if you'd otherwise like to figure out the game for yourself, you can just turn around and leave through the door. The only real reason you might want to replay the tutorial is to unlock the game's mementos. Mementos are earned through fulfilling certain conditions while playing through Underhell. Jake takes certain items from his missions and leaves them on his shelf in his shed. These are treated sort of like trophies for Jake, and he can tell you exactly how he achieved them if you examine them. Oh hey, I know these guys. Yeah, they're gonna die. But, with the tutorial complete and the truck loaded, we're finally ready to start the prologue.
Here's the deal. Apparently, terrorists of an unknown organization took control of an old hospital. Gunshots were reported by a neighbor. There are no commands whatsoever. All we know is that they went inside and started this mess. Now half the city is blocked. We'll drop you on a parking lot near the hospital. It's just one street away, north. You can see it from the parking lot. Go to the top floor in the building in front of the hospital and take up a sniping position. Evaluate the situation and wait for further orders.
After watching that, I'm pretty sure everybody will have the same opinion that I do. In-game cutscenes just don't work for this game. I'm sure it was hell trying to script them together. I'm afraid I'm gonna have to call it a wasted effort though. Cutscenes don't really work in Half-Life. The narrative fits much better when it's played out through Gordon's point of view, and unless you're willing to add a few custom animations for it, then just the stock movements, the arm flails, and the mouth waggles, they can't be anything more than awful. Then again, it could be worse.
You fucked up my face.
Much worse.
And now...
Mitch, please. I can explain.
You have my permission to die.
Something that worried me when playing this game was how large these maps were. They end up being fine later in the more enclosed spaces, but having to navigate through streets and passages can be really difficult with big maps like this. Thankfully, this game is merciful in that it gives Jake wall hacks, prompting him on where to go through yellow highlights. I know what I'm about to say can be considered a cheap shot, but the voice acting in this game can range from bad to just awful. I know it can be a bit of an unfair statement towards a mod, but it can really be distracting when playing this game. I mean, otherwise the game is great, but it just really takes me out of it whenever I hear voice lines read the way they are. It sounds like it's being performed by a high school drama club. And I'm not saying I could do better. In fact, I'm sure with how irritating my voice is, I know I can't do better. Still, the effort put into this game ends up being a little bit, yeah, that. Once we get to the top floor, we're given more info on what our mission is. Some unknown militia group has taken over the hospital for some unknown reason, and it's our job to get in there and clear it out. But before we get the chance to do anything... The gun sounds in this game are great. I'm not a gun nut or anything, but I wish more modern FPS games had this sort of effort put into them. These guns look great, sound meaty as all hell, and fighting bad guys just looks and feels great in this game. I'll get more into it later, but they have these death rattles that sound chilling. It's really cool. You almost forget you're playing a horror game. Completely different from what playing the house offered you. It even has light survival elements where you have to eat food in order to keep your endurance up. I don't think it has too big an effect on the gameplay though. And you're most likely never gonna starve, unless playing on the harder difficulties makes it go down faster. Unfortunately, this impromptu rescue mission reveals our position, so we're forced to move in. The game lets you choose the point of entry, but I'm hardcore, so I burst through the front, taking no prisoners, man.
I'm coming out. I'm not one of them. Don't shoot.
Something you can do in this game to increase your odds of survival is to kick helmets off of dead bodies and add them to your own armor. Obviously, you can't wear more than one helmet, so I actually like to imagine Jake is just strapping helmets all over his body for protection. A little duct tape or like a loose belt. It's a funny thought. Another thing this game does is give you squad mates for you to command. They'll do their best to follow you, and believe it or not, they're actually pretty competent in shooting their targets. But unfortunately, they don't have the same survival instinct that Jake does, and as a result, they tend to die more quickly. And I tried my damnedest, thinking that I'd get something special for keeping them alive, like a memento for your trophy case or something. But no, you get nothing except for maybe a little extra dialogue. So my advice would be to just command them to walk into a corner somewhere and forget about them. Seriously, it took me an extra 2 hours to finish this prologue because I was trying to keep them alive. It wasn't worth it. One thing I really want to do when going back and looking over my footage is to just add even more moments of gameplay during gunfights. Like, just watching the gunplay happen is really fun, and I feel like a complete idiot trying to explain to everybody why it's fun. Running behind cover, deciding what gun you enjoy using, kicking people who are a little too close to you. You can even catch and throw grenades that are tossed at you right back at your enemies. I mean, for fuck's sake, people, it's a free mod. Just get Steam, download Source SDK, download the mod, move the file, and then there, you're playing the game. I've just sorted out your entire weekend for you. Go have fun. Unfortunately, there isn't too much left for me to say about the prologue. It has a neat moment afterwards where you're timing short sprints from cover to cover, dodging subway cars. There's a particularly annoying bit after that where you have to escort hostages out of a mall into save points. But it's followed by a cool helicopter fight where you actually have to shoot the pilot instead of the helicopter itself. I mean, how many times do you play Half-Life and you have to fight a helicopter, but instead of taking out the pilot, you just blow up the helicopter with whatever you have? There's a neat little puzzle where you have to get this elevator working. I thought it was just the boiler preventing the door from closing, but once I got in the elevator, I saw a sign there that clearly tells you that the elevator has a weight capacity, and I had a really rough time trying to get the boiler out of the elevator afterwards. After fixing the elevator, it takes us down to a parking lot, and this is the part of the game where I really started to notice the finer points of map building. A stray bullet from a gunman sets off a car alarm, warning me of his presence, and I honestly couldn't help but feel a little charmed by the detail Underhell had put into it. I mean, Left 4 Dead had already done this back in 2008, but it's a game mechanic that the game itself warns you about ahead of time. What happened to me was just a small incident that caught me off guard. Jesus peace, Left 4 Dead came out in 2008? Holy hell. Anyway, we reunite with Frank. I think he's Jake's foster father? I'm pretty sure he's friends with Jake's dad. We don't know much about their relationship. And of course, because Jake's life is a train wreck of dead loved ones, Frank gets his ass taken out by, no joke, someone who looks like he's wearing Enclave power armor. Then, the game without warning just gives us unlimited stamina and tells us to chase down the assailant. Now, it is possible to lose him. I actually did my first time playing this game. But this, when you see him sprinting and crashing through walls, it completely changes the theme of this game very quickly into something somewhat in the realm of science fiction. I honestly felt a bit of whiplash experiencing this, because even though this game has paranormal hauntings in it, the game still felt very grounded in its own setting. It decided to reserve the ghosts and paranormal hauntings in its own chapter, which, once again, is a separate part of the game. But I managed to chase down the assailant and kill him, causing him to T-pose for a split second before disintegrating into nothing. I'm not exactly sure how I mounted his helmet up against my trophy case then, but eh. Afterwards, we get a very short vehicle section, and I'm gonna skip talking about it because it's very short and genuinely very terrible. I really don't see why this was a part of the game. I mean, maybe it was made to avoid another in-game cutscene, in which case I guess I kinda support it, but I don't know. If anything, it's just an excuse to break past a roadblock that was set up earlier in the game. After leaving our vehicle, we step into an office, and here is really where we get to see the fear influences take over. It's a really great setting. You got tall cubicles, you've got gunmen shouting out your positions, trying to flank you, they're screaming tactics at each other, trying to corner you. It's done really well. And the next part? I don't even have words for it. It's very silly, but I think unironically the Enclave soldier from earlier sort of secretly readied me for what was about to happen next. Yeah, so after that happened, we come across what appears to be a growing conspiracy taking place. But one we'll have to uncover another time. Because, oh no, we're being gassed. Only to be double gassed after waking up. The leader of the terrorists want Jake taken alive, but I guess the soldiers recognize that Jake is the protagonist or something, because they want to take him out as he rightfully is recognized as a threat for taking out like 100 of their dudes by himself. But, like a protagonist, the gas gives Jake some sort of rage power, causing him to slaughter even more people, leading us neatly into Chapter 1 of Underhell.
What the hell happened here? Oh god. I'm gonna throw up.
Hey, someone's moving. Not for long.
But before that, we have more of the house to explore. Once you explore enough of the house, you'll eventually unlock Jake's attic, and inside the attic you'll come across a rough schematic of Jake's property. And now that you're in Chapter 1, you can explore this new area. But something from this is missing. The schematic claims there's a well in front of a large tree. Now, I couldn't find a well, but what I did find was a shovel. So, you rub the shovel along the dirt floor, and bam! Instant well. Just add shovel. So after making 3 mandatory trips back to the house to get the shovel, then the crowbar, then the flares, we jump inside of the well to explore it, because this is clearly a good idea. I mean, what else are you going to do on a foggy weekend morning? Go to church? Unfortunately, someone seals off the well behind us, leaving us stranded down here, wherever here is. I mean, I'm pretty sure I know who it is, but I'm not going to tell you. And if it isn't already obvious, we're not alone down here. See, 3 gunmen were sent to Jake's house. We don't know why, but we do know that they were intercepted by an unknown counteragent. These 3 men were all expertly shot in the heart before being set on fire and tossed down the well. One of the 3 gunmen, named Angelo, survived the ordeal due to his dextrocardia, a rare condition causing his heart to be on the right side of his body instead of his left side. The goal of this level is to find 6 hidden cassette tapes in order to uncover the story of who Angelo is and why he is chasing you.
My name is Angelo. Sooner or later, I'm going to get out of here.
But I'll leave that for you to discover on your own. This level is really well done, and the trials this man faced are just haunting. Unfortunately, this entire level falls flat on its face. Why? Angelo can only move at about a step at a time. Yep, this is his top sonic speed. Even if he corners you, he can just be easily juked. Something I would have done is have Jake's vision focus on Angelo, similar to how the Mesmer in Subnautica works, and if Jake doesn't try looking away from him, Jake blacks out, coming back to his senses only moments before being assaulted by Angelo. At least I'd consider him somewhat a threat. Instead, it's just a brisk walk from place to place, collecting tapes. No real challenge. This part of the game had a great running start, but it just completely tripped before the first hurdle. But with all of that out of the way, let's move on to the final part of this game. And get ready, folks. It's a hell of a trip from here on. Don't believe me? In this chapter, Jake sort of becomes an isekai protagonist by the end of this chapter.
What the hell is that thing?
Shut up! Follow me. West transit control. Transit is secure. Open western element gate.
Chapter 1 starts with Jake arriving at a prison I don't remember the name of, so I'll just call it Arkham City. Because that's basically what it is. See, the rage gas from the earlier chapter saved Jake's life by giving him rage powers, that I don't think ever comes up again. But he didn't just stop killing his assailants. He also brutalized innocent civilians, pretty much giving him life with no parole. I feel like this is the part of the retrospective I'm gonna have the most difficulty with. This chapter has a lot of surprises in it, so I'm gonna have to decide what I want to spoil and what I want to keep a surprise. Again, half the reason I'm making this video is to spread awareness about this mod in the hopes that it'll make some sort of return. But the other half of why I'm making this amateur's retrospective is to encourage people to play it. So I want to pimp this game out as much as I can, but not enough that you feel like you've experienced all of this game just by watching this video. In fact, I have something I can keep from you guys right now. My first time playing this mod, I saw a cutscene where a riot was close to breaking out, but the chief of security, who goes by the name of Terrence Mason, steps in to show us how much of a badass he is by firing his revolver in the air and stopping it from happening. But in this playthrough, I actually wander into a prison shower, and I pretty much get immediately ambushed. I mean, it should have been obvious, right? When has something good ever happened in a prison shower room? So I guess if you want to see that cutscene, you're just gonna have to play the game for yourself. Well, after killing the prisoner, more guards come to arrest me. They tell me to drop my weapon, so I actually check to see if I can. I couldn't find the key for it, so I try to see how many of them I can take with me. I put up a decent fight, but the numbers always win in the end, and they eventually overpower me before throwing me into solitary, which, again, is different from my first playthrough, where I just walked back to my cell. But before we move on to the next day, I'd actually like to talk more about the intro to Chapter 1. The little tour this mod gives you is a great introduction to Chapter 1. Of course, like most games with great interactive intros, it suffers from repeat playthroughs. You know how in Fallout 3, when you play through your character's childhood, it's great the first time. It might even be great on your 5th or 7th playthrough, because there's a lot you can do in it. But about the 10th or so playthrough, you get really sick of it and you just want to create your character and get him or her out of the vault. So in Underhell, when all you can do is slowly move and walk from one end of the hall to the other, stop to listen to one guard, stop to listen to another guard, it just gets really boring really quickly, especially on your second playthrough. This chapter also handles cutscenes a little differently, opting to instead switch back and forth between free moving cutscenes and cinematic cutscenes. Of course, this feels a little more intrusive as all hell, but I think I understand why it's doing it at this point. I think the devs wanted to avoid players using speedrun exploits to skip certain parts of the game, so they take control away from the player to prevent any chicanery from happening. And I guess in that sense, I can appreciate the cutscenes for what they are, but it's still pretty rude of the game to just rip away my immersion like that. I honestly think it should be up to the player as to whether or not they want to sit still and listen to what's happening, or if they want to jump around like a jackass throwing books and coffee mugs at people's faces while they explain exposition. Oh, but here's someone I really want you to see. Brian fucking Johnson, your new best friend. Seriously, I really like this guy. I'm not even bothered at all by his subpar voice acting. That's how much I love hearing this guy speak.
I always wondered. This place is in like the 23rd century technology-wise, but we still make people sign these damn fuck points with a pen and paper. You tell me. Hey, you tell me. Doesn't that seem a little contradictory to you?
I don't know.
And what the hell is that big box supposed to be? Huh? Shit, man, even my grandmama, rest her soul, had a goddamn plasma screen TV.
I guess our applications do not require more advanced hardware.
No shit? Well, congratulations. The first smart thing to come out of your mouth today. Now put your lazy ass back to sleep. You, come on, let's get this over with.
Actually, a lot of these new characters are pretty great. I can't really justify it properly just by explaining it, so you'll probably have to experience it for yourself, but I really feel invested with these new characters. I'll get more into them later though. Oh man, but I hope all of them make it out alive. Okay, I think I've said all I wanted to say about the game's opening, so I'll just start us off good and proper. Here's Chapter 1.
Let's just face it, alright? You're gonna be locked up for a good while, and as long as you behave and obey orders, you'll be fine.
because many people died.
I held you responsible for this, and I'm gonna make sure you go straight to hell for what you did.
This right here is when it finally hits you. This is the part of the game that becomes survival horror. Something this game does that I wish a lot more games would do is it leaves you completely defenseless for the first bit of it. You can't even kick the enemies. In most games, it's just a roller coaster. It's thrilling with only a hint of death. I love the first Silent Hill, but if you die in that game's intro, Harry just wakes up from his nightmare. I love the first and second Dead Space game, but in both intros, you just run straight and push a button to survive. In Underhell, you have nothing. Now figure out how you're gonna survive this or die.
Biggest planet cracker in her.
What a mansplainer, the USG Ishimura. Stupid bitch.
Another great thing this game does is how the game doesn't hold your hand through exploration. It sometimes does the yellow wall hack thing from before, but for moments like this, where you have to navigate big new areas, the game puts its faith in the fact that you'll figure out for yourself exactly how you're meant to navigate this place. It really is just an extra thrill having to stop and reorient yourself while navigating a large, dangerous room under the pressure of shouting, biting zombies. Sometimes having to stop and find yourself on a map before memorizing directions. This is a sort of pressure I haven't felt since playing the Penumbra games. Trying to navigate between these very rudimentary looking hallways. Eventually, you do manage to find a few survivors, and they get you armed and dangerous before sending you off on a suicide mission. Just like in most survival horror games, the moment you get your hands on a firearm, it stops being horror. For the most part. But this game, it still changes it up from time to time. I don't think I'll spoil how exactly, but it does a good enough job of making you feel helpless, even with the extra firepower.
There's something really big coming towards you guys. I don't know what it is. Brace yourselves.
Let's get the hell out of here. This way.
Case in point, this guy. We see him cleave one of our new friends before he corners us in a small room, forcing us to escape above him. The reason why he's invincible is a little contrived, but he's still a great threat. especially since he can still hurt you when you're above him by throwing his big knife at you through the ceiling. Oh, and just a small aside, I like that if you want to use your flashlight, you have to be using one of the one-handed weapons for it. The one-handed weapons are your handgun and a nightstick. Those are two weapons that are obviously weaker than your shotgun, so you'll have to choose between wanting to see or wanting to defend yourself better. But later, after completing a side quest, yes, this game has those, you can get a pocket flashlight that your character can attach to himself. And as far as upgrades go, it's a pretty good one, being able to boomstick deadheads and see it happen at the same time.
Anyway, if you could do this for me, I can give you my shoulder flashlight. Alright? It's way better than the one you're using. I'm pretty sure it uses less batteries as well.
You can also use flares with one-handed weapons, but those only last a little while, and they can alert nearby enemies. Unlike the glow sticks, which you can attach to yourself and stay whisper quiet with them. Another character I really like is Tom. He pretty much takes care of this place, opting to live above the ceiling instead of in a proper room, earning him the nickname of Hermit. He gives you an optional scavenger hunt where you have to find his deck of cards, one card at a time. I don't even bother. I do alright in finding a little more than half of them, but I'm not gonna play a literal game of 52 pickup when I could be blasting zombies in the head with my boot. And no, the reward isn't worth the trouble. But I do like that if you leave him during one of his long-winded speeches, he does get a little upset with you.
Can you believe it? Of all the things he could chew, he decided to go through my card deck. And now all I can do during my break is just, it's okay, I didn't want you to stay and listen to me anyway.
Something I mentioned in the prologue that is just as strong a statement now is that the map design is really good. Like, of course the beginning area looks the same and rudimentary, but that's because it's just the area where the prisoners live. Later, you get to, like, labs, you get to sewers, you get to electrical rooms. You even have to navigate one of these rooms with a gas mask to prevent getting mustard gas inside you or something. It's some sort of deadly toxin. It can be anything, really. It's just the stuff that you know you don't want to breathe in. And the zombies do change their appearance dependent on where you are in this facility. So, like, if you go into the laboratory, you'll see zombies with lab coats on. If you go to the more factoried areas, you'll see zombies with, like, orange vests and hard hats, which actually make it harder to headshot them because of it. And if you go to the more residential areas, you'll see more civilian-looking clothing. It's because all the staff that work here, they pretty much have to sign away, like, a decade of their lives. So they have to live here away from their families. It really does make this entire place feel like Arkham City. I didn't just make that comparison to be mean or to bully the game. It pretty much works the exact same way as Arkham City does. You know what? I think this is where I'm gonna have to end the tour. I think this video has gone on long enough, and I'm realizing that I could probably still talk about this game for another hour or so. And I mean that literally. This is my second playthrough of the game, and my time for it clocked in at about 13 or so hours. So I think I'm just gonna have to stop myself from giving away more than I want to. Because there is a lot in this game, and I am honestly amazed that it is the length that it is. And it was going to be longer before the dev completely abandoned the project. So I'm just going to have to do the responsible thing for myself and end it here before I keep going on and on about nothing. But really, what can I say about a game that has no real ending? What could my closing thoughts be about an unfinished project? all I really want after all this time is just a little closure. This isn't the first time this has happened to me. There are different games and shows I've played and seen where it's left open for a sequel, but nothing ever comes of it. The worst part about this bittersweet feeling is just how empty it can make you feel. I really wish I could leave this off on a high note, something that'll leave you people with just a little hope. But at the time of this video, I haven't seen any activity from the game dev about Underhell. There are so many games that get killed off before they're finished. Some games like Thrill Kill don't even get a chance to be released before being killed off. So I guess in that sense, I am grateful for what we have now. I mean, it's a 13 to 14 hour long game if you know what you're doing, and that's honestly really amazing to me, especially for a free Half-Life 2 mod. So this is it. This is my coin at the bottom of a wishing well, hoping that one day Underhell can make a reappearance in some form or another. If it comes out as an indie game, I'd buy it. Of course I would. The proof of concept is already here. It can be a little messy, even a little overambitious at times. But there's a definite passion in what was made here, and how many games can you say that about nowadays? But sadly, Underhell is still very much asleep, and I don't think it's waking up anytime soon.
Well, you are quite hard to track down. Does this place mean anything to you? You're not where you think you are.